Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our Spotlight series, Microsoft Accessibility Pushing the Boundaries. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. On the next slide, you will see how to best engage with our Teams live event format. You can use the chat box to ask questions. Those will go directly to the moderator, and then we'll queue those up for the end when we've got a little bit more time to address those. And we ask that you please help our moderators don't spam the chat. And then on the next slide, we'll give you a rundown once more with what I'm sure you're at this point very familiar with at Build is the Microsoft Code of Conduct. And without further ado, I'll hand things over to our own Megan Lawrence to introduce herself and kick things off.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I hope you've had just an incredible day of Build content. I'm sure that you have. I am here today to talk specifically about accessibility at Microsoft. So my name is Megan Lawrence, and I am the Senior Accessibility Evangelist working for Jenny Leigh-Fleury, our Chief Accessibility Officer. So let's dig right in. In fact, 1 in 5 people in the world have a disability today. And I have incredibly good news for all of you out there, which is if you don't have a disability today, don't worry, you will, because we are all aging into disability. In fact, many of us have had that experience of breaking an arm, a leg, or having eye surgery where we have some sort of temporary disability. And so we all know that at some point we will need assistance. And while disability may be the largest minority group in the world, I prefer to just think of it as the fabric of society. And so COVID-19 has taught us many things as we are working from home or continuing to work on the front lines to make sure that society is still functioning. But I understand many things about the way that we can continue to really build that culture of inclusion, even if maybe we're sitting miles apart from friends, family, and certainly our coworkers. So the first thing I realized as I was thinking about all of this is that, we all want to belong to something that's bigger than ourselves. And so being connected with community is more important than ever. So our families, our extended friends and neighborhood communities, maybe our religious communities, but certainly our work communities. We spend so much valuable time with our coworkers, and we want to be connected right now. And technology is playing an important role in making sure that we all can stay connected, whether you're using Teams to hold meetings or whether you're using chat in order to check in with people. I know that I have taken the time to learn more about some of my colleagues than really I ever had because we're socializing in new ways. And I've learned that we all have really different communication styles, right? For some people, getting on camera and having a conversation means they feel heard, they feel seen, I can see their expressions. For others, it's really about that chat, right? Being able to send me an emoji or a funny clip is a way of reaching out to say, hey, I'm doing okay today. How are you doing? So that's part of the reason that we are really leaning into inclusive design and putting accessibility and disability at the heart of the way that we design our tools. Because when we do, we're absolutely going to meet the needs of people with permanent disabilities. So I have fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition, which means I can't sit at my computer and type all day long. So speech to text becomes a really important way for me to continue to work throughout my day. So I will often dictate emails or get my thoughts down using dictation in Microsoft Word. Now imagine that you have a temporary disability. If we were all in a room together and I asked how many people had broken their arms, a number of you would be raising your hands. And so again, something like dictation allows you to continue to work or go to school and stay connected with your friends while you heal. But I think that this is just an example of good modern technology. My husband is one of those people who always sends text messages with the phone. If you've heard me speak before, you've probably heard me joke about the fact that I honestly know everything he is saying to everybody. I think it's a sign of a good marriage. Sometimes it's a little annoying, but the important piece is that that is just expected functionality, right? That's his preferred interaction style. And so as we think about building that inclusive design component in mind, we are going to make sure that we meet people where they're at when they need to be met. Now, at Microsoft, we have a very healthy hackathon culture. and I am a data-driven person. And so a couple of years ago, we had 10 people who came together to join hackathon teams to hack on accessibility and disability. This year, we had 250 teams of people, thousands of folks around the world hacking on accessibility. And to me, this really shows how this is getting into the DNA of our company. So I'm going to pop out here of the presentation for just a moment and move over to Microsoft Teams. I don't think I'm going to reshare my screen. Give me 1 second because I want you to see this live because it's really incredible what you can see. So give me 1 second. And of course, it's not cooperating the way that I want it to. So we're going to go ahead and just continue sharing the PowerPoint presentation. So give me one more moment. We'll reshare out. I always say you have to be incredibly brave to do live demonstrations. So bear with me, I'm going to talk you through this one. So Immersive Reader was one of the hackathon features that we saw come through. And what it does is it allows you to completely customize your reading view. So imagine you're in Teams and you want to read a chat. Boom, you can go into Immersive Reader and get rid of all of that visual crowding. What you don't see in this particular demo is that you can also change the settings. So you can seamlessly make text a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. You can change background colors. In fact, pastel background colors have been proven to increase reading comprehension for people with dyslexia. And in fact, about 70 to 75% of people in organizations around the world will never tell their employer that they're dyslexic. So by having features to change the background colors, and you can also have that information read out loud to you, we immediately improve reading comprehension, not only for people with learning disabilities, but certainly as a way to customize anything that we want to do. Now, in order to accomplish that, to have really great built-in accessibility tools, we take an integrated approach to inclusion. So Satya Nadella, who I'm sure you're familiar with, is very open about his son with a disability and how that has impacted his leadership style. But I spent some time with him in Chicago, and he said something that really has stuck with me, which is that an investment in accessibility is an investment in innovation. An investment in accessibility is an investment in natural user interface design, right? Use the computer with your eyes only. Use the computer with your voice only. Use the computer with gesture. In the next 10 years, we're going to have 2 trillion Internet of Things in our environments, meaning that we're going to have more information. AI is going to be helping us make sense and make good decisions based on that information. And we will also be sharing more information. So again, leaning back into inclusive design, we want to make sure that when we focus on privacy for people with disabilities, we really will help get privacy right for everyone. And in fact, we just have established earlier this summer, the AI Responsibility Office to make sure that we're taking a good hard look at how AI is both inclusive and also transparent. Now, in order to do all of this, you got to have people with disabilities on your team. So we have an inclusive hiring initiative where we want to bring in that top disability talent. We want that lived experience. We want that out of the box thinking that's going to help us invent the future where we have the Internet of Things surrounding us and maybe we don't have these screens in front of us. And AI is powering some of our best tools. And I'm going to show you that as we go through the presentation today. But in all honesty, at the end of all of this, this is about partnership. So I hope that the folks that are out there listening today take the challenge. What is the crazy, innovative thing that you have been wanting to do? That big idea that you think will make the world a more inclusive place, and let's come together to work on it. Because it's by bringing people together in which we will be able to reduce the barriers that have lasted maybe for years, maybe centuries. Now, focusing on accessibility is not just the right thing to do. In fact, I joke that that is a ridiculous statement because we have such a great business case. So companies that hire and support people with disabilities make 28% higher revenue on average. And I don't think that there is any company that doesn't want to make 28% higher revenue and do the right thing by hiring great top disability talent. Now, when I think about what the value proposition is, when we're helping your company, your organization, or maybe even just you as an individual, really build that culture of digital inclusion through inclusive, accessible technology, what we get is the ability to personalize, right? So maybe with Immersive Reader, you have information read out loud to you because you have dyslexia. Or maybe like me, when I get really jet lagged. I guess that's kind of a funny thing to say since nobody is traveling these days. But think about when you get really tired. Having that information read back to me helps me retain more of it. So again, this helps me stay productive when maybe I've not had a great night's sleep. This is also about compliance. So we ship the most accessible products that we ever have. We have a robust testing system in place. So we have third-party vendors who are certified by the federal government through our trusted tester program. They do code-based inspection of all of our applications to make that became the basis of our conformance statement. You may know these as a VPAT. So you can find out what the accessibility of our products are at any time online for free. Now, I think something that's really interesting is thinking about that workforce of the future. So in the next 5 years, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. And so we did some research to try to figure out, well, how does a millennial decide where to work, right? And what we found is that they want to work for organizations that reflect their values. They're a very value-driven generation. And so things like diversity, disability, inclusion, and in fact, sustainability are on the top of their list. They're looking for organizations that have corporate responsibility built into the DNA of who they really are. Now, interestingly enough, we did a little research also around Generation Z. So these are the generation that are going into college just now. And they said two very interesting things as well, which is mindset, not skill set, right? If I have the right growth, learn it all mindset, I can pick up the skill. And the second one was mental health, that they are looking for organizations that are paying attention to mental health and managers that are managing emotional relationships. I thought that was incredibly interesting. But at the end of the day, man, I hope this is about innovation, right? I want to push the boundaries of what is possible by thinking about how we use inclusive design to think about that crazy new idea you have. Hopefully you're picking up on a theme here. I'm hoping to get a bunch of emails in my inboxes later on with your great ideas. But let's dive a little bit into the tools. So first of all, let's start with Teams. We have a lot of meetings these days. In fact, I think I have more meetings now than maybe I ever have. And I'm having more meetings with a variety of different kinds of people across a variety of organizations. And so it's really important to kind of get down, how do you build that inclusive team meeting? So here are my top 5 tips. Number 1, encourage people to turn their cameras on. It's a great way to be able to see someone's expression, pick up on those behavioral cues that are so important for humans since we are such social creatures. Many of us now have the option within Teams to choose from a variety of backgrounds. Now, while it can be really fun to imagine yourself or have it look like you're at the beach or in a Star Wars scene, opt for those blurred, very simple backgrounds. This one actually came from one of our developers who is hard of hearing herself. And when you blur the background, it allows somebody to focus on the face, and it's easier to lip read and pay attention. Now within Microsoft Teams, as well as within PowerPoint, and I'm going to turn these on real quick to show you, we have subtitles. So now at the click of a button, you can easily have subtitles turned on. This is both in our PowerPoint presentation, in our Teams live meetings, as well as in Teams. So one of the things I like about turning on closed captions in Teams is each person turns it on for themselves. Now, at the end of the day, I believe that my goal is to help organizations build cultures of inclusion and that they all see disability as a strength, like I do. But telling your disability story is deeply personal. And so we want to provide the right tools for people to use and then create the culture for them to tell their own story. So everybody can turn on captions, but nobody else will know that you have it turned on. Now, make it a best practice to just start recording meetings. We see that people go back and record meetings and watch them later many times. Maybe this is because you have ADD, a mental health condition, or you just weren't totally paying attention because you are both taking on a full-time job and teaching school to your children, taking care of pets and parents. So make it a best practice so that folks can go back and watch it later. And when you're not speaking, put yourself on mute. That background noise can be really challenging for some people. I'm going to pop off subtitles here since I know we have them going in the other program. Now, one of the things that I love most about recording those meetings when they're in Teams is that you can have them automatically sent to Microsoft Stream. So whether it's a Teams meeting, whether it is a YouTube, something maybe you've professionally made within your own office, or gosh, even your phone. I mean, the phone cameras now are incredible. You can pop it into Stream, which helps you organize your videos. And a couple of cool things happen here, which is, first of all, it will automatically create a transcript. So voice to text here. And one of the things that we know is that AI is not 100% correct, right? So what you can do is edit that transcript. So if there is a slight error, you can go ahead and make it 100% correct. And then those will show up as closed captions within the video. Within a few short clicks, you might pull that video out of Stream and post it in a Teams channel, put it in a blog, or send it in an email. And now you have a fully accessible video no matter where you send it. Now, one of the important things about having things like captions, right, is that what we're really doing is creating a universal design learning environment. I know that's a long way of saying, UDL, right? Long way of saying that I'm engaging you with multiple senses. So you can follow along with the demonstration here. You may be able to see my face, and you can look at the words and the captions as they go along. And we know from research that people just remember more information. And don't you want people to remember more of what you say? I mean, at least most of the time, right? Now, I know that we all share a ton of content, right? Whether we're sending emails, or we are putting together Word documents, or we are putting together PowerPoint presentations. So make sure that you check the accessibility of your document. I mean, you wouldn't turn off spell checker, right? So make sure that you have accessibility checker turned on, and you go and see exactly what you need to do to make sure that that content is 100% accessible. Now, I want to turn the conversation here just a little bit to mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we know that during COVID, many people have been experiencing mental health symptoms, either for the very first time, or for people like myself who have an anxiety disorder. I can tell you that I have moments where my symptoms are definitely spiking. So we know that mental health is the #1 disability in the world today, and that about 83% of all of us will have a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in our lives. Now, this might be something more short-term, like postpartum depression, or something more long-term, like my anxiety disorder. But we do know that it is significantly affecting the productivity in our workplace. So they believe it costs about $1 trillion on average in the US in lost productivity, just associated with anxiety and depression. And we know that mental health conditions span many more, such as eating disorders, schizophrenia, and others. And so we really have to think about, how do we find that right work-life balance? I know this seems like such a challenge, especially now when it is just incredibly easy to roll right out of bed, right? Into your office area, wherever that may be, and start working on your computer. And in fact, about 87% of us read emails after hours, but I was shocked to learn that 30% of us are reading emails before we ever get out of bed. So disconnecting and unplugging from work needs to be an intentional exercise. So I am using my analytics and the well-being tab to keep myself honest. I know that I need to get the downtime. In fact, my husband the other day said, man, your work-life balance hours have gotten completely off. It's you come out of the office 12, 14 hours later. And it's really beginning to take a toll, not only on your mental health, but on our relationship. And while that was a hard conversation to have, and I was thankful that, he did say something to me, I really made that promise to totally unplug on Friday nights and Saturdays to make sure that I could recharge. And so my analytics gives you a purple little square every time you successfully don't go back online after hours. Now, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you have a disability or not, you want to make sure that you get the focus time you need during the day so you get done what you want and you can get that downtime that will make you a better worker. So within my analytics, we also have the focus tab. Now, one of my favorite features is that using AI, it will look at your Outlook calendar and say, hey, it looks like your day is starting to get a little bit busy. Would you like me to grab you some focus time? And it will grab 2-hour chunks for you to really get that undisturbed work time. Because it takes 23 minutes on average to refocus after watching or looking at one chat or one email. So if there's something you learned today about your own work-life balance, please turn off notifications. They really, really do not help you. But this is also about being mindful of others and not pinging other people when they're getting their downtime. So now we have little nudges in Outlook that say things like, hey, are you sure you want to send this email? It's after hours. Because we know when your management chain or sends you an email, they are very likely to answer it. And so if you are a manager and you're sending emails after hours, that means that you are not giving that right work-life balance for your folks either. So just be thoughtful. And in fact, if you're a person who loves to email at 10 to 11 at night, that's really your thought time. You can just simply click a button and have those emails sent to inboxes in the morning. And be flexible and provide a lot of clarity. These are times where work may be changing. And so really having that open, honest conversation, both with your manager and with your employees about well-being has become a critically important topic. Now, there's a couple of other pieces here. I talked to Mental Health for America a couple of weeks ago, and they had a couple of core themes that they were beginning to see, and isolation was one of them. And so using Teams and turning on that camera can be a great way, right, for your team to come together to combat isolation. But remember that using the camera can be really fatiguing. I know everybody on this call has at some point gotten that camera fatigue because it takes so much extra attention to be constantly looking at images. So I set a rule for myself, which is I always have the camera on when I'm working with a customer or a client or somebody new, and then if it's somebody that I work with frequently, then I will just say, hey, can we have a camera-free meeting? And just being super open about it to make sure that I just, get the space in the room that I need. Now, if you're like me, it seems like we have a million virtual happy hours. There's so many things going on. Just remember that people communicate in different ways. And so that open chat within Teams can be a really great way to connect with your team as we're all working from home and allowing people to use things like emojis and different types of memes to express how they feel. So be thoughtful about the way that you not only talk about your mental health and well-being with your manager, but also the way that you create those outlets for each other. But Megan, you're saying, why are you talking about mental health? This is Build. We are a bunch of engineers. I get that, but I still want to make sure that we make the point that in order to take care of yourself, you've got to really be thoughtful about how you do it. But let's turn a little bit to development tools. So Brad Smith, Microsoft's president, said something when I very first started this job that has stuck with me, which he says Microsoft's voice should always be the softest in the room, because it is not what we build, it is what we help you build. Now, we know that we're in the era of the digital citizen. You no longer have to be an engineer or a computer scientist in order to create apps. which in some senses is really exciting, but in other senses can be somewhat terrifying, because now the ownership, the responsibility, the opportunity to make sure that all of our applications are accessible is in the hands of everybody. So that's why we have an accessibility checker in Power Apps. And if you're a Power Apps fan, we've got some incredible documentation around how you do Canvas Power Apps to be totally customizable and accessible. Visual Studios has worked incredibly hard to make sure that it is an accessible platform so that you can hire and retain great blind coders. Remember earlier, hiring people with disabilities on your team not only helps the bottom line, but it actually builds this culture of innovation in which you really will think about the future of what computing looks like. And think about how you're using AI. So, earlier we talked about voice to text and text to speech and how important those kinds of components can be. So if you're creating something where you're asking people to input information, make sure that they can do that in a variety of ways. Now, you got to see just a little bit of a preview of Immersive Reader. That is an Azure Cognitive Service as well. So now imagine having an app or having a website in which all of the information could be seamlessly read out loud to you. And here's my favorite part, translated into over 68 different languages. So you have seamless translation on any of your applications to think about how you localize into all of your markets around the world. Now, we know that website and Android apps are a hot topic when it comes to accessibility. And so we developed what's called Accessibility Insights, which is an automated accessibility checking tool. It finds about the top 25 most severe accessibility bugs, which is about as best you're going to get with an automated tool. I really like the fact that after it shows you what the error is, it connects it right back to the global accessibility standard. So WCAG 2.1 AA. Some of you may be really familiar with that. So it gives you very, very clear instructions on where the error is and exactly how to fix it and how that connects back with global accessibility standards that many of our government customers are looking for us to be able to address. Now, in order, again, to make sure that our applications really are inclusive and accessible, you have to have people with disabilities involved in the design and the user research. So we've developed the Accessibility User Research Collective, which is 900 people with disabilities that regularly give Microsoft feedback about the accessibility of our tool sets. Whether that's a design review, getting a subject matter expert to talk about a new idea, or having you, take something home and use it in the context of your daily life. But if there's something that I can press upon you as a developer community, is that bringing the disability voice to the table is an incredibly critical component of what needs to happen to create tools that work for everybody. Remember, leaning into inclusive design means you're modernizing your tool set, and people with disabilities are the design constraint that are going to help you think through how to do that in an interesting way. I'm incredibly proud, if I can be proud for a minute, is that we got feedback from about 500 people with disabilities this year, which means that, we're really finding those pathways to innovation. Many of you have seen the Xbox Adaptive Controller commercial. This was a piece of hardware that came out of a hack that allows you to customize your gaming experience. So people with limited reach or strength can now create a system in which they can use all parts of their body to game. Now, the Accessibility User Research Collective is done with one of our partners called the Shepherd Center, which is a rehabilitation hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And so people who have spinal cord injuries, part of their therapy, and they said part of the most important part of their therapy is getting back to things that they love. And many people love to game. So think about that as well. How is it that your tools and what you're creating may be used beyond the capacity of the way in which they were originally created? So now the Veterans Association is using gaming, literally, to help support their veterans as they come back into society and heal. Now, while the Xbox Adaptive Controller might be my favorite part, it's actually the box itself. So we had to create a box that could be opened simply with one hand. So here on the screen, I have a box. It's got one tab, and you just pull that tab and the Xbox Adaptive Controller seamlessly comes out of the box. So this was a moment where our inclusive design team, or the packaging team, really leaned into inclusive design in order to reimagine the way that we had done something forever, which is put a device in a box. So this is my challenge to you. What is your box moment? How are you going to fundamentally lean into accessibility, bring people with disabilities into your design and development process, and either reinvent something that you've done the same forever or create something brand new? Now, I want to remind people that there is an ecosystem of support out there for you. So if you have any questions, if you are a person with a disability and you have questions about Microsoft accessibility, we have the Disability Answer Desk, which is free IT support for you and those that are supporting you to make sure that you can get done what you need to. And we also have the Enterprise Disability Answer Desk. And so this is more at an organizational level. So for example, if you're rolling out something like Visual Studio's, Windows 10, Office 365, and you have a question about accessibility, we have a great team of people who can make sure that we get your questions answered, your feedback taken, and maybe you even find a bug that we can plug right back into our development process. Now, because it is Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm going to have us do one thing. It is the end of the day as well, which is to take one really big, deep breath with me. So here we go. Remember to breathe. 2-3 deep breaths throughout your day signals that nervous system to just start to relax and decrease anxiety, depression, and stress that we know we are all feeling during these COVID times. It also helps us become a little more alert and increase our attention, because the best way that we can take care of the future of ourselves, the future of our companies and communities, is to take care of this present moment. And so with that, I'd like to open up for a couple of questions.
Thanks so much, Megan. Those were great tools. I'm going to go ahead and read some more questions from the chat bar. We have Denny. Why was Immersive Reader in the past automatically included in Microsoft Edge for all of the websites, but is disappeared now, and developers need to include this in their own website via Azure AI?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite, will you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear you. You
Sorry
broke up.
about that. Yeah. Why was Immersive Reader in the past automatically included in Microsoft Edge for all websites, but has disappeared, and developers now need to include this in their own website via Azure AI?
So that's a little bit of a tricky question, because if certain websites do still empower Immersive Reader, it depends on what the content is. So for example, if you go to New York Times, the New York Times homepage does not have Immersive Reader. But if you go into an article where there is just text and content, then the Immersive Reader will appear. But you, as a developer, absolutely can use Azure Cognitive Services to embed it in a way that will be fully functional within your full app or your full website. So I know that that is a little bit a yes and no question, but I do highly encourage you to go ahead and use the Microsoft AI to build that into your own app so that you get the functionality that you want all the time.
Great. Our next question is, we know people with autism that a blurred background is disturbing for them because it's difficult to keep focus. Do you have insights about this?
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about the disability spectrum, so here at Microsoft, we recognize 6 categories of disability. So people who have blind or low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, mobility, limited reach or strength, neurodiversity, so including people with autism, as well as mental health. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that we are an incredibly robust but diverse set of folks. And so this really invites the question to learn from your colleagues, right? So similarly, how I say sometimes, look, I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm feeling overwhelmed. Is that okay with you? It's starting the conversation about where I'm at and what I need. So I always invite the conversation at the beginning of the meeting, like, hey, does everybody want to have, blurred backgrounds? Is it distracting for folks? So that people feel like they've got a voice. And interestingly enough, I also feel very, very distracted by people with the backgrounds, and they keep changing them. Right? So it's like every 5 minutes, the person's like, oh, I'm bored with that one. I'm going to turn on a new one. And that constant changing can be a real trigger for me. And so this is, again, just that opportunity to learn from your colleagues, see your own disability as a strength, and talk about what works for you.
Great. Ron asks, how do you balance an introverted colleague's apprehension to share their camera image versus encouraging a deeper engagement by doing so?
So how do I encourage somebody who doesn't like to use their camera to have a deeper engagement?
Yep.
Great. Again, this goes back to communication styles, right? So for me, having the camera off sometimes allows me to focus more on the person's voice and what they're saying. And then I will turn on the caption so that I can follow along, and then use the chat to have an ongoing, deeper dialogue. Like maybe there's a group of people who are all speaking. I don't really feel comfortable like butting in with my question. So I'll use that chat as a way to pose questions, answer people. And I have noticed in, for my community, that chat has become a way to make meetings way, way more meaningful and allow people who may not always have their voice heard for several different reasons feel like they can participate in a much, much deeper way. So getting some thoughtfulness around the way you use the chat, I think, can be critical. Now, I want to caveat that a little bit because we have seen people that use the chat just to make jokes. And so I know for us, we really set some rules at the beginning of meetings, which is, hey, everybody, we love that everybody is funny and interactive, but let's keep the chat really focused on the work at hand so that people feel like they can have their voice heard and follow along.
Great. And our next question is from Leslie in reference to recording meetings. She asks, don't you need to let everyone know that you're recording before you can record?
Yep, awesome point. And within Microsoft Teams, there is a little notification. So if I turn on a recording, everybody in that meeting will see the notification that says, hey, we're recording the meeting. But the best practice is to always say, I am going to start recording this meeting now, and verbally letting people know that that's happening, as well as seeing that chat or that notification at the top of the Teams meeting window.
Great. The next question I'm actually happy to answer. It's, will these slide decks be shared? And yes, along with the on-demand version of this meeting, we anticipate that coming online Friday with the rest of the build content. Our next question is there a way to talk with Microsoft if I am a disabled developer? I am nonverbal and I'm only able to use one hand. So things like collaboration, text is overlooked if video is highlighted, and typing, multiple keys. So a way to kind of provide input back to Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. That disability answer desk. I encourage you to give us that feedback. Let us know what it's like to use our products in your daily life. Tell us what you want to see. It's really interesting because I think that COVID in some senses has shown the seams of so many companies. And I think we as Microsoft have used this as a way to more deeply understand what our developer community, especially folks with disabilities and our disability community, need and want to see in the product. I often think of software as like language. It's this like living, breathing entity. And so we need, right, that feedback from all of you to help decide where we continue with our investments. That was a kind of a passionate response because I am so serious and encourage you so deeply to engage with our disability answer desk, and you can do that all through chat.
Great. Our next question is, other than captions and transcripts, is there anything else in the works for the deaf and hard of hearing community?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So within Microsoft Teams now, you can pin somebody. So if you do have an ASL interpreter, you can make sure that that person is constantly pinned, and that you can always see them. We also have some really interesting projects that are happening in collaboration through our AI for Accessibility team, which is our $25 million grant program with NTID, to help us think about how, and again, this is a research project, but I think it's really interesting, which is, if you have automatic captions, it's using AI and it's not 100% correct. We just know that. And so how can we use those AI generated captions and then allow a human to go along and fix them in real time? So it's like a cart. We don't want to see CART go away. We want to continue to see ASL interpreters do their incredible work, and we just want to make it as easy as possible to do that on the Microsoft platform. So tomorrow is Global Accessibility Awareness Day, GAD. Please watch out. We've got some incredible announcements coming from Microsoft, and those announcements will be rolling all month long, as next week we go into our Ability Summit, which is our the Microsoft Accessibility Conference. If you haven't signed up, oh my God, get signed up. You only have a couple of days, and this is the place where the engineers really show their stuff. And so you will find out all kinds of new and interesting things about products across the disability spectrum.
Great. Next question is, can you speak to how Microsoft partners can leverage the Accessibility User Research Collective?
That's so great. I've had this question a lot this week. It must be on people's minds. Right now, it is just a Microsoft partnership exclusively, but we would certainly be open to entertaining the idea of helping our Microsoft partners leverage that great database that we have. So all I can say is, like, reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn. Let's chat, because I agree. We've got just a great group of people who provide fantastic feedback, and we pay them $50 an hour. I think that's important to note, that we pay people for their time. And if we could open that up to create more inclusion, I'm game on.
Wonderful. And I'll use this moment to say 5-minute warning and a last call to get those questions in. What we've got on the docket now is, I struggle with totally white and totally dark themes. Is there any way that Windows can directly make a gray background, something like a magnifier on screen keyboard that's already part of Windows 10?
Yeah, so go to the ease of access setting and go to color filters. Color filters was originally developed for people who are colorblind. About 8% of the male population is colorblind. And so you'll see a variety of different settings in there, and we do have a gray setting, along with several other ways to customize the way that your color is seen. You might also really think about using night light. So our screens emit blue light all day long, and so I actually use night light as a way to provide warmer tones all day long across my computer to just reduce that blue light, which causes eye strain for me. So check out those two options and see if you find something you like.
And just to close it out with one final question from your moderator. Since you've been with Microsoft, how have you felt the landscape has changed around the conversation of inclusion?
It's been a really, really interesting journey. And so I think what I've seen is that we have gone from a group of very passionate people to thinking about accessibility as a business. And so we have developed our own accessibility evolution model. This is very similar to a maturity model that you may be aware of, that really helps us think about, what are the dimensions that we're constantly paying attention to. So one of the dimensions is the developmental life cycle. Another dimension is people and hiring. How are we getting the right people with disabilities into our company? Another one is training and sales. And so, I think that that's the biggest change, is really seeing this as a programmatic approach across our entire company. It's not a group of passionate people. This is our approach to systematically building inclusion into everything that we do. And it's kind of fun to be at Build today because I feel like I get to give these like little previews. And so Jenny Lay-Fleury, who's our Chief Accessibility Officer, has a really cool blog coming out tomorrow that's going to talk exactly about that, which is how has Microsoft changed? What is the journey that we have gone on, you know, over the last 5 years? But I can tell you just for myself, being a person with a mental health condition, I've worked with the disability community for 15 years. And I never said anything about my own anxiety disorder because I felt a lot of shame and a lot of stigma. And now that I've been at Microsoft over the last couple of years, I've seen a systematic change in disability really being something that people respect and openly talk about. And mental health is one of those things. And so I am now very openly talking about my own mental health condition because storytelling does reduce bias and stigma, and Microsoft has provided me with a safe place in order to do that. And to me, that's special. I've waited my whole life to say that I work at a company where it's cool to have a disability.
Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your story and your time with us. That's all we've got for today, but we hope that you all will join us for the accessibility talks over at the Ability Summit next week. We've got that link in chat. Thank you for joining us, and we're popping the link in so that you can get back to the My Build website.